Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Conservative Corner. I'm Elliot Margolis. I'm here with my co-host, Gail Burke. And today we're going to talk about the election, the upcoming election. You need to understand a few things. Number one, you don't have to like who you vote for. We're not voting for personalities. We're voting for issues. And that's very important to talk about the issues and not about the personalities. And remember one very important thing. History is not there for you to like or dislike. It is there for you to learn from it. And if it offends you, even better, because then you are less likely to repeat it. It's not yours to erase. It belongs to all of us. Now, when you understand that, remember the history of the Trump administration and the history of the Biden administration. Speaking of which, Gail, I'm going to take a couple of minutes here. Just deal with it.
Big surprise.
The Biden-Harris accomplishments in the last 4 years. Number one, they allowed over 15 million unvetted illegals into this country. Number two, we had historic inflation crisis. Now, even though inflation may be going down now, it's going down from way up here. It was over here under the Trump administration. Record high gas prices. You know why? Because Biden stopped doing drilling in this country and buying oil from our enemies. Record high consumer debt. Never been this high before. Released terrorists into this country. We've had the Ukraine-Russian war. We have the Israeli-Hamas war and the Hezbollah war. An incredibly disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. Violent crime is skyrocketing in this country. Interestingly enough, it's the Democrats that have tried to jail political rivals. That doesn't sound like a quote-unquote democracy. They lied to the American public about Joe's decline. They declared war on American energy. They have record low test scores from K to 12. You know why? Because of all the illegals in this country. We're taking our teachers and teaching illegals English instead of teaching our kids. And keep in mind that Biden and Harris are the two most unpopular presidents and vice presidents in the history of the country. With that in mind, Gail, you want to say something?
Well, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Well, I think Kamala Harris has started to change her ways a little bit. She's now doubled down on, and with the media support, of course, and with the support of most Democrats, calling. Now, this is a group that has always been angry at Trump calling names. Now it's Trump is a fascist. Trump is he's like Hitler. Trump is going to be a dictator. And on and on and on. And then you tune into CNN and all the news media, most of the news media, I should say, not all, are doing the same thing. So I think that's the plan for, at least for this week. Who knows how bad it'll get next week, with the week before the election. She had a town hall with Anderson Cooper, I believe it was last night or yesterday, and it was an absolute disaster. I don't know if you saw it or not, Elliot, but she couldn't answer questions at all. And surprisingly, even though he's with one of the liberal news media, he was very effective at pushing her to answer certain questions, like, what is your border policy? She couldn't really tell him. She blamed Trump, of course, for everything that's happened on the border, never really admitting that it's an open border and has been since Harris and Biden took office, because he sat down and got rid of, I believe it was 90 different executive orders that Trump had put through. And of course, top of the list was anything to do with the border. The borders became open, it became publicized, and that opened the floodgates. To date, I believe Harris has visited the border twice, and she's gone to different parts of the border where there was no surge of immigrants coming in. She spent, the last time she went, a few weeks ago, she spent a whole 20 minutes down there, and then she took off. Her plans now, sort of, we think, we're not sure, may include building a border wall. When Cooper questioned her about this, he stated to her, if you remember, you called the border ridiculous, unnecessary, and a number of other nasty adjectives. And now you're saying you want to continue the border wall? Well, then she started to backtrack. I am going to do what's ever necessary to close the border. You can't have it both ways, Kamala. You're either going to build the border wall or you're not. If you recall, Trump earmarked $650 million to continue the border wall. Was never done. What happened with all the materials? They were left to rot, and then they were sold for pennies on the dollar. That's what the border wall under the Harris administration.
Yeah, but now she's talking about building the wall.
I know, I said that.
But I didn't hear you.
What can I say? Hopefully our audience will have heard it. Even though I know some of you may have already voted, please listen to what we say, because this is such an important election, and we cannot continue down the same road with Kamala Harris doing the same thing or worse than Joe Biden has done for the last 4 years.
You have to understand, too, that under the Trump administration, there were no new wars, okay? All of a sudden, Biden comes into office, and guess what happens? Biden decides to attack Ukraine. If you remember correctly, it was under Obama where the Russians came and took over Crimea. Funny, Obama, they take a country. Biden, they take a country. Under Trump, peace. Interesting. But you know what's real important too? Obama and Biden both gave Iran billions of dollars in cash. Okay? This is very important. What did Iran do with the money? Feed their people? No. They gave money to Hamas and Hezbollah, and they built more tunnels, they built weapons, and they attacked Israel. Now, we knew that would happen, but if you remember, under the Obama administration, one of his security advisors was Iranian. Interesting, isn't it? You have to understand, Iran doesn't care about their people. Gaza doesn't care about the people. Hezbollah doesn't care about the people. They care about hate. Understand, in Gaza, they teach their kids from 5 years old and up to hate Jews and to kill Jews. Now, how can you have a two-party state when you're teaching your kids to hate? This is under the Democratic administrations of Obama and Biden, and Harris has said she is in the Situation Room, the last person to leave with Biden, and agrees with everything he said and everything he did. These are her policies.
This is the same woman who would not recognize, in spite of what the whole world was watching, the decline of Joe Biden's cognitive abilities, and she didn't lift a finger to stop it. She wouldn't admit it. None of them would, until it got to the point where Biden was starting to lose. That's when they pulled the coup of forcing him out. Now, I have no love for Joe Biden, but what they did to him and what she allowed them to do is unprecedented. And she wants to be president of this United States? I don't think so. I think that we're now finding, when Trump lost the 2020 election and he was talking about different things, they didn't have the proof they needed to convince the Supreme Court that there was widespread fraud. It's now beginning to come out. And it's also beginning to come out the reason why the borders are open with these millions and millions of illegals crossing the border with the help of the Biden-Harris administration. They were not only coming across the border, they were also flying them by planes from their countries. They would pick them up in Mexico and bring them into the United States, give them a cell phone, give them a credit card, and off they went. So what do we end up with? We end up with gangs from Venezuela, MS-13 gang members, murdering, robbing, assaulting people all over the country.
And not only that, but they're actually colluding in sex trafficking. Okay?
That's right.
Because
And
they're
drugs.
allowing it to happen.
And the drugs.
They're allowing these gangs to come in and take over apartments. But what's also important? We've talked about a number of issues, okay? For some reason, the only issue that the Democrats talk about is abortion.
Yeah.
The only issue that they talk about. And when you talk about war, when you talk about the economy, when you talk about crime, I'm not sure abortion fits in there that well. But they blame Trump for abortion. This is very important, okay? Abortion is not illegal in the United States of America. Getting rid of Roe v. Wade only followed the Constitution. Look at the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment says if there is something that is not written in the Constitution, it reverts back to the states. That means if abortion was not included in the Constitution, last I checked it wasn't.
It wasn't.
That means every state has the right to make its own decision. Now, is Trump responsible for following the Constitution? Yes. He's responsible for following
That's right.
the Constitution.
And so was the
Are the
Supreme
Democrats
Court.
responsible for trying to subvert the Constitution? Absolutely.
Well, that's what the Democrats want to do. That's why you hear them talking about packing the Supreme Court. Everything was fine with the court before Donald Trump had the opportunity to appoint 3 Supreme Court members. After that, everything was off the table. They condemned the Supreme Court. They condemned Donald Trump. Why? Because they went back to the abortion issue and they got rid of Roe v. Wade. And now it's all over the place. It's his fault. It's the Supreme Court's fault. We need to pack the Supreme Court in order to have a more judicious Supreme Court. That's baloney. They don't like it because they haven't got the majority anymore. The 3 people that were appointed are judicial people. They believe in the Constitution. They believe that the Supreme Court should follow the Constitution and not be biased. And that's what Antonin Scalia was, a really intelligent constitutional person. That's what the Supreme Court is supposed to do. They're supposed to do their jobs. You may not like some of the decisions they make, but too bad. What they're doing now is they're trying to prevent the states. This is on, going back to voting again. They're trying to prevent the states from removing illegals, aliens, who are on the voter rolls, and they have proven in some cases that these people have actually voted in several different elections. And when they want to, they're trying to remove them. The Department of Justice is trying to prevent them. They're trying to sue the governor of Virginia
And remember,
from doing it.
the tax money that you're spending is going to help illegals, yet we have veterans of the United States military that are homeless. And we're not helping them, but we're helping illegals, people that came into here illegally. To keep in mind, we have a governor of Massachusetts who was an attorney general in Massachusetts, who is a lawyer, and she doesn't understand how to enforce the law. Why should you and I abide by the law when she doesn't?
Well, how can this administration actually file a lawsuit against a governor of a state that is trying to clean up the voter rolls? That's why we have to be very careful this election time, because we are trying to keep the election as clean as possible. They're also filing suit against the governor of Alabama, doing the same thing, and they found thousands of illegals on these voter lists. And they've also found dead people. What these states should be doing every election is purging the rolls. People move away, people die, people move into another jurisdiction. Sometimes they vote twice because they're on both voter rolls. But the illegal immigrants coming in, when they go to get a license, a driver's license, they give them a form, and they can check off whether or not they're a citizen. They have no proof that they are, but the DMV doesn't get into that because that's not their job. And now, when they get on the voter rolls, the governors are just trying to get rid of these people who have self-admitted that they're illegals and they shouldn't be allowed to vote. That's the bottom line.
It's the bottom line. Now, keep in mind a couple of things. Number one, going back in history again, Kamala Harris, you know, the one that's running for president of the United States, she was one of the leaders in the defund the police movement. Yeah. Okay? So when you see the vice president of the United States, and she wants to be president, wants to defund the police, when crime is already crazy in this country, you can't walk around in the big cities. Is that what you want? Do you want, you know, your freedom taken away by crime, as well as your guns taken away? Because once the guns are taken away and they don't enforce the laws, you're in real trouble. So that's something that you have to understand. And when I said, remember history.
And also, when you listen to these candidates, particularly Kamala Harris, listen to very carefully to what she says. She is famous for avoiding answering questions, and even the media has now been talking about her word salads. And I've noticed when she begins to speak and she's not sure of what she should be saying because she's not authentic. She has
keep in mind, Gail, that she was opposed to fracking before she was in favor of it, and then she's opposed to it again, and then she's in favor of it again.
So we're not sure where she is at this point.
No. She took that from John Kerry.
Yeah, oh yeah. But when she starts to answer a question, all of a sudden her hands are going. everywhere. It's like she's trying to gather her thoughts. How am I going to answer this question? Where am I? Who am I speaking to? Oh, yeah, I should answer it this way. The woman is just incompetent. She's far, far left. She's left to the left of Bernie Sanders, if you can believe it. And he's a self-avowed socialist. What does that make her? She claims she's middle class. No, when you look back on her record, her father was a professor. Her mother is a professor. They lived for a few years during her teenage years. She didn't even live in this country. She lived in Canada. And then she came back and she went to California. Well, of course she would go to California. And what happened there? She claims that she prosecuted all these bad guys for the things that they were doing. What she doesn't tell you is she also backed people that were trying to get these bad guys out, and she donated to groups that got these guys, once they were convicted, they came out of jail.
She actually did fundraising for them.
She did fundraise for them.
Yep.
So the woman is, I think she's the biggest danger to this country that we've seen in a long time. And we had some bad people in office.
Keep in mind, the Democrats keep saying Trump is a danger to democracy. Okay? Well, couple things. Number one, you notice they never tell you how he's a danger to democracy. Number two, do you realize the United States of America is not a democracy? Never has been, never will be. According to our Constitution, we are a republic. Now, you might say, well, what's the difference? Glad you asked. Okay, the difference is real simple. Every individual state is a democracy. But when you combine everybody together, we're a republic. And it's not one person, one vote for the entire country. It's each state has equal amount of say by their population. And so our Constitution is a republic. The Democrats don't know the difference, and they just they lie to you. That's basically it.
Well,
because you'll notice,
yes, absolutely.
Kamala Harris has said Trump is the reason why the border is a problem. Or in the next sentence she'll say, well, Congress has to do something. Well, couple things. Joe Biden was in Congress for over 40 years. What did he do? Kamala Harris was in Congress for a number of years. What did she do? It's the blame game. And I'm getting tired of the blame game. Isn't it time to get something done? Now, if you remember, 4 years ago, or 8 years ago when Trump got into office, he made promises. He kept every single one. He kept all his promises. He did what he said he was going to do. Biden said he was going to unify the country. Have we ever been more divided?
Well, it's interesting how now when Harris goes out, which is rarely, I mean, these are the last 2 weeks of the election, she's been hiding. Whenever she has any kind of an interview or a town hall, it takes her 2 days to prep for it. And then when she has the interview, she can't answer the questions. So, they don't want her out front. How is this woman possibly ever going to deal with foreign leaders? Imagine her talking to Vladimir Putin. And he actually has come out and said he supports her. Well, of course he would support her.
Yeah.
He knows he can get away with everything that he's gotten away with Biden.
They can walk all over her.
Of course.
I mean, here's somebody that changes her ideas based on what Trump says. Okay? So if Trump doesn't want to have taxes on tips, now she doesn't want to. But she did, and she was the tie-breaking vote in Congress against giving tax breaks to the people who get tips.
Well, you know, one of the things, talking about tips brings something to mind. One of the events that Donald Trump did last week, and he's all over the place. He's everywhere. He's like the Energizer Bunny. He went to McDonald's. Now, mind you, Harris claimed that she once worked at McDonald's. Well, apparently they could find no records that she ever worked there. So he decided he would go to McDonald's. He not only went to McDonald's, he went in and asked for a job making French fries. And it was really hilarious. He went in, they gave him an apron, he put it on, they showed him how to cook the French fries, and he was actually giving the French fries to the driver, the people that went through the drive-thru. It was a wonderful moment to see Donald Trump. This is what he is. He may be a billionaire, but he's also the common man, unlike Harris, who claims to be the common woman, and she has no clue.
Gail, I have to interrupt. We're getting low on time, but I wanted to say this. Trump is going to have a rally at Madison Square Garden.
Oh, yes.
Okay? You know what Hillary Clinton said? That's what the Nazis would do. Now, you know, not only is Hillary a total idiot for saying something that stupid, do you know what the Nazis did? Do you know who the Nazis were? Tell me, how can you compare Donald Trump to the Nazis? Because, I mean,
Well,
this is how bad the Democrats are getting.
Yeah.
They are so desperate
they are.
because they've got nothing that they lie and try and scare you into voting for an incompetent boob like Kamala Harris.
And he's not the first person to use Madison Square Garden for a big rally. Other Democrats have done it over the years. So, and they weren't called names for doing it. She couldn't do it because who would come? Nobody would be there. They don't want her there. Anyway, it's almost time to go. We hope that those of you who are still wondering who you should vote for, drop it. The evidence is clear. Those of you who haven't voted, please vote. And we recommend that you vote for Donald Trump at the top of the ticket and try to vote for Republicans. We need to change things in this country. And we're only going to get it changed
Statewide
if we go
as
out
well.
Yes, unless we go out and actually vote. So thank you for watching. We have one more week before the election. We'll bring you some new and interesting things next week as well. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you, Elliot. Good night.